Hello and welcome to a Shot in the Arm podcast coming to you live from the Women Deliver Conference here in Kigali, Rwanda. I am your host, Y-Isha Raphael. As one of the largest multi-sectoral convenings to advance gender equality, Women Deliver 2023 has convened 6,000 people in Kigali and 200,000 plus people online through the virtual conference. Now, Women Deliver 2023 aims to enable inclusive and co-created spaces that foster solidarity for sustainable solutions on gender equality. Africa is now facing a major demographical challenge. According to recent UN forecasts, the continent is expected to double its population by 2050 from 1 billion to nearly 2.4 billion inhabitants. Most importantly, half of that population will be less than 25 years old. And my generation is the vanguard of this change, particularly us young women. We refuse to accept the status quo that is holding back our rights, our economic and social opportunities, and most importantly, given the climate crisis, our future. Now, today is going to be a solo podcast where I'll be obviously giving you my updates and insights on the different events that I've attended, the different sessions that I've been to. And what I want to start getting into is the official start of the conference, which was headlined by a lot of high level guests, such as presidents. Okay. We were honored by, the all protocols observed. We had the president of Hungary, Ethiopia, Rwanda, and a little bit controversially, the president of Senegal. For a lot of activists, that was something that some people were not happy about, which is valid. Okay. But for me, who stood out most was former UN Executive Director Dr. Pumzile Mlambo Ngcuku, who made it a point to speak on youth leadership and creating spaces that are accessible for young people to make the changes that matter to them. And she said that at this time, right here, right now, Women Deliver 2023 in Kigali, Rwanda, we are creating this space. This is us as leadership. This is us as change makers, the elders saying to you, young people, we are creating the space for you, and we are going to do our best to make sure that it is inclusive and it is progressive and it is supportive. Okay, for us to be able to do the work that we need to do as young people and young leaders and activists and advocates, the space needs to be safe. I know that we love talking about safe spaces, but really, honestly, the space needs to be safe for us to feel comfortable. And the more comfortable we are, the harder we're going to work, the more that we're going to do as young people. Okay. But that was yesterday, and it was a really beautiful opening ceremony with poetry from a local Rwandan talent. We had the Rwandan ballet there. There was music. There was a cultural evening after. It was a really beautiful event. And I think the best way to start this kind of event, welcoming us into Rwanda. And I think a lot of the young leaders really appreciated that. As you can see, Rwanda is just beautiful. As I've been saying, the sun is shining, the weather is weathering. But what I want to get into now, besides just Rwanda being beautiful and the beautiful welcoming ceremony that we had, is my highlights from today's conference, which will start with my first highlight, the fireside chat with Malala Yousafzai and Ziada Yousafzai, who is her father, where really many young leaders were either re-inspired because of knowing Malala's story already, or were inspired to learn of her story and touched not only, like I said, by her story, but also by the clear support of her father, which gets me to the point that I want to make about being a youth leader. Being a youth leader, being a young leader, being an activist and advocate is not easy. As I always say to people, it is not just work for us. It is about our personal experiences that really affect us so much that we are pushed not only to make changes in our personal lives, we are pushed to go stand in front of all these big people, as I've said, former executive directors of the UN, directors of organizations, government leaders, policymakers. We are forced to stand there as young as we are and say that, hey, we are demanding this because not every young person needs to experience certain hurts and certain pains and certain challenges, unemployment, HIV prevalence, teenage pregnancy, FGM, all those things that we are fighting for. It's from our own personal stories, and it takes a toll. And what is important is that we as young leaders need to have a support system. And I think that is something that really stood out to me. The fact that along Malala's journey, her family has been there for her. And I think that that is something that some people may take for granted, but I think that that is support that a lot of young leaders and activists don't have. For example, many young leaders and activists who are fighting for themselves, especially in the LGBTQIA plus community, they won't have that traditional support. And that is why conferences like Women Deliver are so important, because it is not only a space for us to interact and network, but it is an opportunity for us to create our own support systems, a support system that is going to understand you, that is going to nurture you, that is going to take you further, not only in your advocacy and activism journey, but also emotionally, right? So that when you fall back sometimes, when you stumble, sometimes you have that support system that is going to be like, hey, we understand the fight that you're fighting and you need to keep pushing. Just dust yourself off and keep pushing. So, support system for anybody that is watching, I want you to understand, if you know a young person who is an advocate, who is a youth leader, who is an activist, make sure that you are their support system. And that can be done in many ways. Now, another session that actually stood out to me and that I want to talk about was a session on HPV. And also, to make a point, Women Deliver, there's not a lot going on in global health, in terms of global health sessions, especially on HPV and cervical cancer. I mean, the session that we had was an hour and 30 minutes, and trust me, everybody, we ran late. They almost kicked us out of the conference room because we were ready to continue this conversation. HPV and cervical cancer are things that are not talked about enough. They're not talked about enough. And one woman made a statement about a fact that is so painful for me, because cervical cancer is mostly, I'm sure 90% preventable. And she said that 9 women die every single day in Uganda from cervical cancer. What kind of stat is that, guys? What kind of stat is that? 9 women every day. And she was like, if 9 women, if you turn around and if you wake up and tomorrow 9 women died, or rather yesterday 9 women died in your family, will there be any women left? Right? So that is why I'm saying it is important for there to be more conversations about HPV and cervical cancer. But I want to talk about the points that were made that stuck out to me. And I think that these are points that are really usually brought up in global health conversations when we're talking about things like, for example, HPV, HIV, any medical issues, or rather global health issues that are affecting mostly young people, right? And that is youth engagement and education and awareness. And I think they go hand in hand. So with youth engagement, especially particularly in this discussion, we're talking about the struggle that organizations have and governments have trying to reach young women. And how do they reach young women? How do they engage with young women? How do they interact with them? And therefore educate them and make them aware about some of the issues, so that they can make informed choices. And I'm like, this is something that is brought up every single day, guys. I would wish that these organizations and pharma and governments would understand by now that there are certain steps that you need to take. But that is why we have Women Deliver, so that young people can speak up and let them know that, hey, this is what you do. Okay. And I think that unfortunately, like I'm saying, there was not enough time. I think that if that session could have been 10 hours, it would not have been long enough, but that would have been enough for us to get really into the gist of what is happening in Africa in terms of HPV, and what do you do when you need to increase youth engagement in order to create the demand, for example, for the HPV vaccine. Because right now there is not a demand, because young girls don't know actually what is going on. They don't know that, hey, you can actually have the symptoms. You can actually have cervical cancer and have no symptoms at all. So because when you go to a clinic, especially, let me say, for example, in South Africa, they'll tell you, no, Wait until you turn 30 for you to start coming in to get regular pap smears. But a lady was talking about her own personal experience and saying that when I went to just go get a random check, that was done, something that was sponsored by her workplace, and they're like, okay, you're not exhibiting any symptoms, but let me tell you that you have cervical cancer. And that is something that could have been completely preventable, or at least stopped in an earlier stage. And youth engagement is important in that we need to get young women educated about the choices that can be available to them, whether it's about the HPV vaccine, whether it's about regular pap smears, whether it's about condom use, whether it's about pregnancy prevention methods, whether it's about HIV prevention method, STD prevention methods. We need to engage with young women, and we cannot engage with them in our boardrooms. We cannot engage with them in these big meetings where everybody's 50 plus. No, we have to engage with them where they are. We have to meet young people where they are, whether it is through TV, whether it's through radio, whether it's through social media, TikTok, Facebook, all the different social media platforms. We have to meet young people where they are and engage with them, and make sure that we don't only focus on the tokens, because it's fun to talk about young women under the age, between the ages of 16 and whatever, but we also need to make sure that we're engaging other parts of the population, because it plays a role. It's not as if young women are walking around the world and all of a sudden when you turn a certain age, then you just get HPV randomly. No, you get HPV from having, sexual relations with a man who has HPV, right? And unfortunately, for a woman, the effect that HPV is going to have on you is not the same effect that it will have on a man. But it's important to include men in that conversation, whether it is young men or older men, to include them in that conversation about, okay, you may not be this badly affected by HPV, but it is important for you to take the steps to protect yourself and protect young women as well. So that it's not something, well, it is already something that is way too prevalent. But yeah, it's a lot, guys. I can go on forever talking about HPV actually. But the other point that I was talking about, which is education and awareness, we need to make sure that when we are talking about issues, for example, HIV and HPV, we make any information that we are getting from scientists, from doctors, from researchers, the information that we are getting, we must make it digestible. Okay. Young people must be able to understand. You can't go to young people and be like, oh, here's the research, and that is why you need to get the vaccine. No, you need to make it fun. Someone always said that if you want young people to be involved, make it sexy and really make it attractive to us. Make us want to. As much as you're telling us that we don't care about our own health, but if we're uninformed, hey, there's a lot that's going to go wrong, and we're trying to prevent that. And I really enjoyed that session, and it was actually hosted by Dr. Zainab Shinkafu Bagudu and Jessica Posner Odere of the Girl Effect organization. And there were a lot of powerful people in the room, but it was not the fullest room. A lot of other sessions were so full that people couldn't even get in. And I will say that it shows that awareness about HPV and cervical cancer is so bad that it's not a session that a lot of people thought that they needed to attend. And that is why I'm just saying directly to you, Women Deliver. When it comes to global health issues, especially HPV and cervical cancer, we need more. Please, we need more. I know that it is last minute, whether it's the next conference, whether it is virtual convenings that we're going to have, but we really need more. And we need those spaces for young people to digest that information, because there were not a lot of young people in the room for that discussion about HPV. It was mostly doctors and professionals, and there were not a lot of activists and advocates there. But, yo, it's a discussion that needs to be had and that needs to be brought up further. But guys, those are my updates and insights. I hope you've had a wonderful time listening to what I'm saying. We will obviously be coming with more updates and insights about what is happening at Women Deliver. And I hope that you guys will still be joining us. I'm coming with more guests and more people to let you know what is going on, to inform you about the young leaders and young people, because I'm focusing on young people, what they are doing here, how Women Deliver is going to affect the work that they're doing, what they're going to do when they get back home, how they're going to push this thing. So I'd like to thank you for joining in on this solo episode. I'd like to remind you as well that A Shot in the Arm podcast is a project of the Global Listening Project. So thank you to myself for this wonderful session, but thank you very much to our executive production team, Ben Plumley and Eric Espera back in California. So do not forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcast and give us 5 stars, please. And I'll be back tomorrow, either alone or with a guest. I'll surprise you. I am Y-Isha Raphael, your host, signing over and out from Women Deliver here in Kigali, Rwanda. Bye bye.